What's going on, everybody? Welcome to conversation number 13. My guest today was Dr. Vaughn Calhoun. He is a professor at Becker College in Massachusetts, and this guy has me going on some kind of conversation high right now. I mean, we just ended the conversation probably 10 minutes ago, and he is the epitome of everything that I'm trying to portray in this project, in this show, on this channel. He is so passionate, so authentic with everything he does, and I really hope, I think you're going to be able to see as plain as day that this guy cares about what he's doing, and he's really, truly making an impact in his line of work and with everything that he's doing and everybody he talks to. Definitely know he opened up my mind and my eyes to a lot of things, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed it too. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit offline. Fortunately, I was able to talk to you then, but and I even said I wish I could have some of that recorded, because we immediately just I felt your energy just why I wanted you on the show immediately. You're saying some great things, but yeah, thanks so much for your time, for being on here. I really do appreciate it.
No doubt, man.
So
I'm glad to be.
Yeah, so you're a doctor at Becker College in Massachusetts.
Yes.
And you looks like, again, as I always say, every single conversation, everybody's sick of me hearing it, but I don't do any research on you, so I just know the very, very basics of you, but I saw that you're the director of business programs.
Correct.
And then also assistant professor at Becker College, correct? Okay.
That's right.
How'd you wind up there? Why did you, I don't know, so many questions. Why'd you want to be a college professor? Why'd you pick business?
A lot of the questions I get, not only how I got there, but how do I become a professor, you know? And I always tell people I am the accidental academic. Like, this was not supposed to happen, you know? Like, I always tell people, if you knew me back then, you would never thought that I would be in this type of role today. Growing up, I always played sports, right? Okay. And I was a ball player. Went to college on a full ride football scholarship.
Wow.
And it was during this time of trying to be a football player. My goal, like many other young, boys, was to be a pro ball player. But then a couple of things happened, that sort of took me off of another road. So I blew my knee out.
Oh, man.
Gosh, in my second year. We were playing the game at Boston College, and my knee just bent the wrong way.
Yeah.
And it was pretty much over. Then it was also during that same time period where my head coach, he got fired. And that's when I realized that college athletics is a business. I never really understood it until I saw it happen right before my eyes, literally. You talk about people, coaches being fired all the way down to the secretary. Everyone's gone, right? So I'm like, wow, this is what they mean when they talk about college athletics being a business.
Yeah.
But it was, strange, to sort of juxtapose it where, while I was going through my time at Rutgers, I really didn't pick my major, right? So, you have folks who, always want to be a college, professor or become a doctor. That was never in my purview. And I even chose my major based on it being what they call sort of athletic friendly. You can sort of, slide a little this way or that way with it. So when I graduated, I always tell people that I graduated, but I wasn't necessarily educated, right? Because there's this fine difference, right? You can graduate somewhere, but were you educated?
Yeah, were you able to comprehend what you went through?
Yeah, so, so I always tell people I graduated, but I wasn't educated. And I always felt a little awkward about it because I couldn't find a job either. So actually, when I graduated, my first job was at my old school district. I was making $10 an hour, and my job was to shred paper for 8 hours a day because they were going from paper student records to electronic student records. So my job literally was to scan, shred. It gave me a lot of time to think for 8 hours a day. And I said, what am I doing with my life? So I said, I want to go back to school, but do it the right way. I want to go back and really give myself a chance to read books, right? I didn't really read my first book cover to cover until my senior year in college. I said, I want to really give this a try. So I sort of took on the whole stance of where I'm going to do for academics as I did for athletics, and really just going to, at the time, Borders bookstore 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day and just reading.
Wow.
Right? Something I've never really done on that level before. And interestingly, I sort of liked it, right? I was like, man, I'm learning all these things that I really never, gave myself that opportunity for. And it was funny, as I was going to Borders one day, that this older gentleman said, hey, did you play at Rutgers? I'm like, oh, I got a Rutgers football T-shirt on. Like, yeah, but I was like, yeah, I really didn't want to talk to him. But he said, no, I'm an old football coach. So I'm like, okay, respect my elders.
Yeah,
so we sit down and have this conversation, and he's like, I was telling him about my experience as a student athlete, how it wasn't the best experience, at least from my point of view. And he was like, I can see it now. Vaughn Calhoun, athletic director, University of Texas. Vaughn Calhoun, AD at Stanford. And I was like, athletic director? I said, I never thought about that. Like, that seems really cool. So from there, I was working a few jobs in politics, in government. I was getting my master's of public policy, but when this gentleman put this bug in my ear that I could be an athletic director, I'm like, wait a second, maybe I can do this, but how do I do it? He says, don't worry, I got a friend. He's an AD.
Oh, wow.
You can talk to him. So I'm like, sweet. So he said he was one of his buddies at the gym. So he got me a actual interview with him, just to talk, right? So I said, okay, that's what I want to do, right? Because I want to go back and change college athletics, because I feel like there's a lot of folks call it exploitation. They call it where it's not always the best interest of the student athlete, right? So I said, okay, I want to be part of the solution.
Okay.
So I said, I'm gonna go back and get my doctorates, right? I want to get a doctorate, not of like sports management, but of higher education. I want to understand how a college works. Where does athletics fit in it? Because I want to be able to fix it. And at the time, I was working at a job in government, making about $65,000, and I just got married too. And I said, you know what? This is what I really want to do. I'm about to quit my job. And it's 2008 when the whole world was collapsing, like the financial world just going under. Gas prices in California were nearly $5 a gallon. And I said, I'm quitting my job. And I'm telling my wife, I was like,
"Are you crazy?"
What? And then I told my parents, I'm like, I'm about to quit my job. Yeah, I know I just got married, but I'm going to quit my job, and I'm going to move to Boston to go to grad school to pursue my doctorate. My dad's like, "Are you sure? You got a wife, you got a pretty decent job, and I just got this nice little sports car, So I was feeling myself, right? But I said, no, I'm gonna push it all to the side because I know I can make this up on the back end.
Yeah.
So I leave for Boston. Me and my wife leave that following fall, and go from making about $65 down to like $20,000, right? But I'm like,
oh man, you found a good woman
because I can make this up because I believe in what I'm doing.
Yeah, 100%.
As I'm going through my doctoral program, I'm making friends, becoming friendly with my faculty members, with my dean, and as I get into like year number 3-ish, he stops me. He says, "Listen," he said, "I know you want to work in college athletics, but the way that you're talking about it, how there's a lot of improprieties and a lot of things that aren't going the right way. Do you think someone's going to hire you the way that you're talking about it?" And I never thought about it in that way before. I said, I just want to fix it, right? So he says, well, there's another option for you. Have you thought about teaching? I'm like, teaching? I said, teach what? Teach who? He said, teach as a college faculty member. I'm like, I said, really? I said, so I exchanged some words back and forth with him, but he was like, listen, I'm going to set you up with a couple of guest lectures in and around Boston.
Okay.
So I'm like, I said, I don't know about that. I don't really talk in front of people. He said, no, you'll be great. So just do it. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'll do it. And then that's when I first started to teach. So I went around Boston talking about my dissertation, which was on academic clustering, essentially when an athletic department steers a student athlete into a major because it's football friendly, basketball friendly, baseball friendly, and you can sort of get through without going through it, right? So I did that, and people were really digging me. They were like, "Wow, this is so amazing." I was like, "Is this teaching? People loving me?" I said, "I can do this.
I like this."
So then about like a month or two later, a faculty job opened at my first institution where I first taught at.
Okay.
And I interviewed with the president, the deans, and did this whole guest lecture. And they called me like a couple of days later and said, "You got it." I was like, "Really? I got it?" So that's how this long roundabout way of going from a guy who never thought that I could ever teach, and I never imagined doing it, to a guy who's doing it now, which is, it still blows my mind when someone calls me professor. I'm like, wow, it sounds weird. Even I've been in now for almost 6 years, but it still sounds a little strange.
Yeah, but isn't that how it works out? I'm just like completely taking it all in. It's a long path, and yet, especially when you thought like, hey, I would have never thought I would have wound up here. Never would have thought it. But one thing leads to another. Like you wore that Rutgers shirt that one day, and that guy, that old timer, stopped you. Like if you wouldn't have made 2 seconds for that gentleman, then you wouldn't have been here. And I mean, I guess that's how that's how life is. But so many events, or that other guy saying, you could go be the director of what was it? The physical
director of athletics at University of Texas.
Exactly. And you're like, but then I was also thinking like maybe you hadn't thought like such of a high goal for yourself, or that you could have attained something until this guy was like, why don't you go do this, or why don't you go do that? And you're like, you know what? I will go do that, or I'll do something else. And all these things, like these almost accidental mentors in your life, it sounds like, just guiding you in the right way. I think that's incredible, man. That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to have, I just read a book about a year ago called Mindset. They talk about having a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. It's by Carol Dweck. And, a fixed mindset is, the world is the way the world is. There's nothing that you can do about it. Just deal with it. Yeah. Versus the growth mindset saying, the world is the way the world is, but I can do something about it. I might not be able to change it, but I can start making a way to start changing it. And it's just having a different perspective. And what this gentleman did for me, as well as so many other of my, mentors, now I call them friends and colleagues, is they were the ones who sort of just opened my mind to, of essentially possibility, right? That I really didn't have for myself, because for so long I never really defined myself for myself, right? I always looked at it as almost as, okay, I'm this ball player, and that's what everyone thinks I'm supposed to be, and I even started to think that's what I'm supposed to to be. And I never gave myself a chance to think about, well, what else could I be?
You're almost like stuck going through the motions, You're just like you're saying, you're stuck through the motions. You're like, I'm a football player. This is what I think I should be. This is what other people think I should be, or my family, or whoever it is in your life. And you think there's no other options, when in actuality, and it didn't work out for you. You got the injury, but there's so many other opportunities, and you just got to be able to allow yourself to look outside of what you were kind of set on to do originally. It's incredible how your life transpires in that manner, where you think you're one thing. You think you're set out for one track, and you're just going down those tracks, and you just you think that if you maybe be derailed, that there's no other options, no other way you could take your life. Especially when other people are telling you, like that's the way it's going. But when you do become derailed, and you have to be accepting of that change. I think that's something really important that one must have, is to be able to accept that change. Because I think a lot of times in my job and people that I work with, or even myself, even sometimes the smallest, silliest change in my life happens, and I get scared, and I'm like, oh no, like we can't we can't do that. Or I think as humans, that's probably just a human characteristic. So when I didn't play college ball or anything like that. Frankly, I dropped out of college. And, it wasn't for me at all. And I don't want to get too far off topic here, but what I am saying is, you went to college, you played ball, you had an injury, your plan got derailed a little bit, but, through some of those chance mentors, and then here you are, and then you got like 100 books behind you right now when you hadn't even read a book until you were in college.
It's pretty wild, man, just to think of the whole journey and like looking back at it. There's so many people who were influential that just, got my mind right when my mind was just, fixed on this one thing. And but it has given myself essentially, I tell people that, it's so Audre Lorde has this quote, right? If you don't define yourself for yourself, you'll be crunched into other people's fantasies of you and eaten alive, right? So I say, I have to define myself for myself without what anyone else says. And that, like you said, is sort of scary because you're like, well, who am I without this thing that was always there? Now this thing is gone.
Yeah, because it's part of you, especially when you play your whole life. You didn't just end up playing college ball. Like, you started as a kid, I'm sure, and you played your entire life. So that's that's you. That's Vaughn. Like, playing ball is Vaughn. And that was your whole life. And then when you how old? You were 20 years old maybe?
I think I just turned 20.
Yeah, so
No, I was 19.
Yeah, 19, 20. So you've been more than half your life is playing football. And so it is definitely a part of your life. And when that gets ripped away, I mean, and unfortunately, I think a lot of times is you have all these dreams in your head of what is going to happen. Like, I'm going to go through college. I'm going to go maybe pro. I think those are good thoughts to have, of course. But you do need to be accepting of that change when it happens. But man, it's so tough when that happens. I think that's life. I mean, things just happen. Like, crazy things happen for better or for worse. And I think you, like you were saying earlier, you have to not only be accepting of change, but you have to be able to adjust to them. So whatever happened to you happened to you.
Adjustments, right?
Yeah. It's tough, but you obviously you are where you are now, and I think whether you subscribe to the things happen for a reason, regardless of how things happen, however you choose to adjust to them, like we're saying, or react to those things that you can't control, then that's what defines you now. Right,
because you can always control your attitude, right? You can always control that. You can always control your effort, right? Other people can say a lot of things about you, but you control your effort, your attitude, and how you perceive the world. So, I'm always one to try to always get to that next level, right? And one of my buddies, because your first question was, how did I get to my current job? And I always tell people this story as well. Where one of my buddies, he was from Maryland. He was moving up here to go to grad school. And while he was going to grad school, he said he's working at Becker College. I'm like, Becker College? I think I've heard of that before, but I think I drove past it. And he said, yeah. So I said, okay, cool. So I just went, just Googled Becker College, and I said, oh, that's like a pretty cool school. And the president at the time too was this. I saw him on some videos. He was this really dynamic speaker. I'm like, wow, this dude is so engaged. I like this guy, right?
That's what I think about you. Oh man, first video I watched of you, I was like, this guy is getting the crowd involved. He's like pumping people up. He's energetic. Like I feel like you're describing yourself now.
Man, I guess I'm trying to model myself after my mentor that I found, because he was on Twitter. So I said, okay, I said, dude is on Twitter. I said, let me tweet at him, right?
Yeah.
So it was like a Saturday afternoon. I'm at home, just in my basketball shorts. I just sort of say, hey, I saw you on such and such. You're very inspiring. And I aspire to be like you. And 10 minutes later, he tweeted back at me. He was like, hey, thanks. I was like, whoa, he answers his own tweets. So I said, I'm going to tweet at him again. So I tweeted at him again. I was like, hey, can I have this informational interview? I just want to pick your brain.
Yeah.
And it was like nothing. I was like, oh, great. Okay. Whatever. That's fine. Okay. And then about 2 weeks later, I get an email from a Becker.edu. And in the email, it was from President Johnson's secretary. Who was he was Becker's president, and he says, Dr. Johnson wants to meet you. I'm like, oh, really? He wants to meet me? So this was August 2015, and this was in the summertime, and we go, or I go there to his office. We have a 3-hour conversation, right? Just talking about how he got into higher ed, how he sees how higher ed is moving towards. My vision of higher ed, what I want to do. And I told him, I told him essentially the story I told you before. But then my switch is, now I'll be a college president. And that's what I was telling him. I said, I aspire to essentially really be you. And then, we just, and we never talked about a job at all, right? It was just, two people just vibing, and we just sort of we were essentially in tune. And then we talked again. It was essentially via phone. And then we met maybe 1 or 2 more times. And then towards the end of the year, he says, hey, we have this opening. what do you think about it? And I'm like, really? I said, a chance to sort of work, not necessarily with you, but in your same, your same college. That definitely. And now I got to Becker was through a tweet. Just putting myself out there saying, man, this guy looks amazing. This guy sounds amazing. I got to meet this guy. And then a few months later, got a job from it. And I wasn't even looking for a job. All I was looking for was just to have a conversation.
Man, if that doesn't say I need to keep doing what I'm doing right now, then I don't know what does. That's an incredible story, and that actually, I really do, that like gives me confidence going forward, because this entire channel is like full of cold calls, and like I just texted, or I just emailed it, or I can't remember if it was an email or like an Instagram direct message, but I was like, I just emailed him. I wonder if I'm gonna get him back. Like, this guy would be awesome on the show. So like, you gave me that feeling of, you allowed that, like, you reciprocated that. Like, so not only did you do that, in your own life did that happen, but you're giving me that opportunity right now to have that conversation with you and pick your brain, and then even more so share this conversation and your story with other people. So like, you are given the gift that keeps on going right now, like keeps on giving. No, it's awesome. That's an incredible story. No, I mean, it is what it is, and that's the dang truth. You really, it's so funny. You sent out a tweet, and then now you have a job, and it was like, oh my God, it's crazy how that goes. And I think that goes all the way back with, like, I think when you had your injury in football, and you didn't think maybe there was another way that you could go, and this guy pointed out, well, maybe you can do this thing that you had never thought of. And I think just like when you send out a tweet or whatever kind of thing you want to call it in your life, whatever metaphor, if you try this or you apply to this job or whatever you're doing, if you talk to this person, it's definitely never going to happen if you don't initially try, right? So the fact that you initially tweeted, as simple as it might sound to some people, like, is a huge effect. It ultimately gave you a job. And
pretty much. And it came from a very genuine place. I was just in awe of him. I was like, I just want to talk to you, right? I don't want anything from you. I just want a conversation.
Yeah, and I think people can see that.
When folks are authentic, I think people realize that and they can recognize that. I think, if you're trying to get at someone, because, you're trying to work an angle, folks can, they might not pick up on it at first, but through some time they can be like, okay, this guy or girl's trying to get this or that. And
I totally agree. Yeah, that BS authenticity, if that's what somebody's trying to emit or portray, then you'll eventually be able to see through it. Might take a short amount of time or a longer amount of time, but I think and a very important point that you said is to have that authenticity, and you definitely carried that with you when you reached out to him, and even just in a text message, essentially what that is he could sense that, and I think at least when I wrote you, I tried to do that, and that comes with like, I know personally, like, I've had for example, like, you have job recruiters that search out for you, and you can tell they sent like the same email to 100 different people. And I've gotten a lot of those in the last few years, and I was like, I never want to, like, I'd give the same information, obviously, like the bulk of information to everybody, but every single email, I write out myself, because I want to get it through, because what I want to get through to you is going to be different than what I want to get through to somebody else, because you're different, you're completely different than the last guy I talked to, and then the girl before that, and the girl before that. You all bring something different to the table. But authenticity, that rings true every single time.
Yes, indeed.
Because that's who we are, and we need to embrace that individuality, and we need to embrace who we are. And there's a lot of, I think you see a lot of maybe copycatting out there, if you will, or people trying to be something that they think others think they're going to be. But I think if you are just you, and like you said, if you ask that question why, if you figure out who you are first, then I think then you really have, or once you find that answer, or you give yourself that answer, depending on how long it takes. It might take a long time. I mean, I think maybe you're constantly searching for that question too. I mean, you can get like an answer to that question, but you want to be constantly searching within yourself to better yourself,
and I think, one thing, I love technology, I love social media, and I think it puts us on this on this, this rhythm, this cycle of always go, 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 trying to get to that next thing, where we don't take enough time to sort of slow down and reflect upon who we are, what we're trying to do, why we're trying to do it, who are we trying to help. And for me, I always try to carve out some time, whether I'm reading a book or I'm listening to a book, because I think those are the moments where it's my private time, where I can just sort of think and not necessarily engage with the book, but engage with the book, and like saying, like, what is this person doing? How is this person thinking? Like the book I'm reading right now, it's Elon Musk. I think it's called Tesla, SpaceX, and the Quest for a Fantastic Future. And this book is just it's given me time to sort of look at his life, but also look at it from the point of view of checking my life, right? Just listening to his struggles, listening to how he thinks. Not saying that I'm trying to be like him, but saying, well, how does this person think? And I think the more you can start just questioning, and I think that's one thing we sort of lost, is we don't ask enough questions, or we don't ask enough deep questions outside of ask Google, where's this or where's that, right? But really try to understand something.
Well, it kind of goes back, and I think we talked about it. I think it was before we started having this official conversation, like we were offline talking. And I was saying, or you had asked me, why did I start this conversation? Or why did I start this project, if you will, for these conversations? And I said, well, one of the many reasons is because a lot of times, I'd just be walking down a hallway, and I would ask somebody, how are you doing? And they'd be like, just another day, or I'm alive. And to me, I was the crazy person that was like stopped him for a second and be like, you should be thankful for to be alive. I mean, and again, I already had told you all this, but I think it bears saying again. But everybody's problems, yes, I get it, are problems to them, and everything's relative. But at the same time, we do have to. I think you have to be cognizant of the fact that, at least in this country, we're recording this in America, that we have so many more opportunities than a vast majority of the world has. And I know because of a lot of trips that I've done around the world, it's been a lot easier for me to see that. And that's why I always push people to travel if they can. Even if you go over to, like, for example, Europe or another country, like it's so vastly different than this country. And so it goes back all the way to me, maybe stopping that guy in the hallway being like, yeah, it is a great day. Like, literally, the fact that we're alive, and we can say these things, or we can say whatever we want, and we have the opportunity to work in such a manner, and maybe that does make me crazy, but to me, through my experiences, it doesn't make me crazy, because, like, I never want to be the one, and I am not the guy that's, if I go, hey, if I see you down the street, and I'm like, hey, Vaughn, how you doing, man? I'm not just asking. It's not just like a hey. Like, I want to know how you're doing. Like, are you having a good day? And I think, like, and I don't want to talk about this too much. I mean, we'll see. But obviously, I think a huge issue in this country, and growing issue, is suicide. And I don't, it's obviously a very, very tough subject to talk about. But I think, and this is just me talking, this is my opinion, but I think if more people maybe asked, like, genuinely, like, how are you doing today, instead of just maybe passing somebody in the hallway, or, if maybe somebody was walking down the hallway and they were having a really crappy day, and you pull them aside and be like, how you doing, man, or whatever, maybe that would help a little bit, and maybe not, I don't know, but
I think it definitely does help. Because, like I was saying, we're in such a fast-paced world right now. It's a good thing in one sense, but it's also a negative thing, because I think people feel isolated. Like, they got to keep going and going and going and going, but you never stop. And, a person in my role as a teacher, faculty, mentor, I have a chance to sort of see students, twice a week, 3 times a week, and sort of get to know, their facial expressions, their moods, so I can really tell, someone, wow, this person's looking a little off today, and I could say, it's whatever, or I can sort of, hey, what's going on?
And those are those things that does make a difference. That makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference.
It does, So like one of my guys, he was contemplating leaving school, and he was just looking really just down and out. I'm like, hey, what's up? And he's like, I'm good. I'm like, I said, really? Are you really good? He's like, yeah, I'm good. I said, come on, let's just talk. So we started talking, and this conversation lasted now for over a year, where we meet every Thursday and just talk. And through our conversation, I found out that he really doesn't have anybody to talk to. Yeah. And he has a lot of pressures of leaving school, of helping his family, and he's just always sort of on this fence. And and that's one of the reasons why I feel I'm in the position that I'm in, because if it wasn't me, not saying that I'm somebody special, but I think it's part of being in the role of a faculty member where I interact with students, that it's just not about giving them content, right? It's about really trying to help transform their lives and try to help meet them where they are, and then help them rise. Yeah. And every day I feel I have that opportunity to. Now, I can't do that for everybody, but on this particular day, this individual he was just looking not well. But I think, that's part of this authenticity. That's just part of me. It's like, I want to help, right? Yeah. So, checking in with people, I think that's, something we don't do enough of. We just like, he'll be fine. She'll be fine. It's whatever. But unless you ask, you're never really going to know. Yeah. So, it's tough, especially, you hear, what happened the past couple of weeks, Kate Spade, and the Anthony Bourdain, two heavy hitters. She was like, wow, they're living on top of the world, and they do that. I was like, wow, right? So, it's hard to see. Sad all the way around. Yeah. It's very unfortunate, but I think it happens more times, because they're two highly profile people. It gets a lot of press, but I'm not an expert, but I'm assuming there's more people who feel certain feelings that aren't being addressed.
Yeah, and that's what it goes back to. No, exactly. I mean, we both were saying the same thing, but having that authenticity, and portraying that, and be yourself. I know for ourselves too, we have a lot of things going on, but I think it just boils down to don't be afraid to ask somebody how they're doing genuinely.
Oh yeah.
Don't think, and if they think you're that weirdo, I've already gotten over that. People at work know me, for who I am, and sure. I think I get a kick out of it sometimes, but I think hopefully they at least know me for the guy that genuinely cares, because I do. Because I know that a lot of things that I go through, and I try to be positive at work, and then sometimes I'm less positive because of certain things going on in my private life, and some people that are closer to me, they can realize that, and or they do realize that, and then they do say something, and I'm more than appreciate that. And maybe I don't want to talk about it, or maybe that person that you're asking doesn't want to talk about it, but I know even though I don't necessarily want to talk about it, the fact that somebody asked me, or could at least tell and notice that maybe minuscule difference, that something was off with me, that means a lot, and that person cares for asking. So I think we're just nail it on the head, and you can't say it enough to ask somebody. Don't be afraid to talk to somebody.
Right. I really think it's about how can you use your gifts, your talent to help other people out, right? I mean, there's 7 billion people on this world. We live in one of the greatest countries, and it's part of our responsibility to help. And again, helping doesn't mean you got to solve poverty, world hunger, crime, but just those everyday small interactions. That's helping, right? And then that has a ripple effect, because then that individual helps another person. So, that's just through, as a faculty member, I see it, because, I'm not going to see the fruits of my labor per se, it's going to happen years down, but maybe I instill something in them, which gives them this idea to, start the next such and such. Because I always tell my sport management students, I always ask them, well, how did Nike start? They're like, I don't know. I said Nike started with a college paper. Phil Knight wrote a paper about Nike, and that became his blueprint. So,
wow.
Just planting those seeds that you can do something. You don't have to wait until you're, X amount years old, till you get X amount of dollars. You can start it right now, right?
Yeah.
And, it's not just these little exercises and homework assignments and projects we're doing. This can be real life, but it's just sort of changing your perspective on how you see what you're doing in front of you. And that can really have a huge ripple effect, hopefully for the better.
No, I absolutely think for the better, and I couldn't agree with you more about the little things. And I think sometimes maybe we think that the little things won't mean anything because they are little, so then we don't do them. But it like you said, it's the accumulation of the little things that do add up, and if you try to do that consistently and you practice to do that, because of course, I mean, it's hard to do that if you're not used to doing that. Maybe you're not used to stopping somebody in that hallway in that example that we're using now, or whatever it is. But if you train your mind and you consistently and you feel passionately about wanting to do that, and you understand that maybe you won't make that global impact, and that's totally fine. The fact that you could help somebody, that you work with, or that you could help no matter what, or, you write a paper that ends up being the huge global conglomerates. I can't even speak right now.
Yes.
My mind's racing faster, but if you become this huge company, and it's crazy, it all stems from just a tiny little thing. So no matter what you're doing, any kind of, I think, exercise that you do to work your brain, like you're saying, those courses or those classes or anything you're doing, anything that you're doing to help better yourself, better your mind, and better those around you, I think no matter of the magnitude of it, it's going to have an impact, because like you said, it's just an effect. It's that butterfly effect. The smallest thing can have the biggest effect down the road. And you even went as far as say is, it might not even affect me or happen in my life, but maybe I school somebody right now, or I teach someone, or I have a conversation with them now, that later in their life, maybe they'll even give back to their kids, and it's going to be generations down the road. You have no idea how your actions can affect somebody, and how maybe they're not going to affect them now, but it can be so much farther down the road. And I think that's a very cool thing. I mean, it's really neat how that works out, and that's just life. And I think that always goes back to why I'm like, you hear your mother and my mother always saying, and the saying goes, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. I think because the negative effects, the negative vibes can ring true like that as well. I mean, if you're just a negative person, you probably need to talk to somebody, and hopefully somebody will talk to you. But if you're negative and you're just like constantly emitting that negativity, then it's definitely not going to help you. You might feel better the second or that moment, that instance that you're saying that, but in the long run, it's not going to help you, and it's sure not going to help everybody around you that are hearing you saying those negative things. And more than likely, it's like a disease, and it's just going to spread, and it's going to bring everybody down. But I firmly believe, again, as I've said many, many times in this show, that if you emit that positivity, that will equally as spread. Equally as impactful. It will spread, and then maybe you turn somebody's day around, or maybe you turn somebody's life around. Like that guy that stopped you on the side. Like I still keep on going back to that, but that gentleman stopped you. You're wearing that shirt, and like so many things happen. And you said, maybe I gotta pay respect to my elders. I gotta, I'll say something to him right now.
Because I was this close telling him like, man, I really don't want to talk to you right now. But I was like, let me just talk to him, and just making myself available to a conversation, right?
Yeah, and who knows what
those are the things where,
say.
Life are those choices. Now, you can choose to say no, you can choose to say yes, you can choose to be positive, and you can choose to be negative. And that's, that's totally on us. It's on nobody else. My wife, she is a psychologist, and she always says, no one can make you feel a certain way. You are the one who chooses to feel a certain way. And, when we sort of think about it, you're like, I guess that kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But, you choose what you put out there, right? Positive, negative. But, like you said, who's going to really want to be around negativity for a lengthy period of time, right? In that moment, you're feeling bad. You did bad on a test. Okay, yeah, sure, feel bad.
Yeah,
but
it's
then
okay to feel bad.
Why did I do bad? Right? Why did I do bad, and what can I do now? Right? It's about those investments, or not what happened to you, but what are you going to do about it? And those are the things that I really think make, I won't say winners and losers, but those who excel and those who are sort of stagnant.
Yeah.
What do you do after that thing happens to you? How do you react to that?
Yeah, exactly.
And then focusing on the process of getting better and not necessarily focusing on the result. Too many times I think folks focus on the result. I'm not there yet. I didn't get this yet. I didn't attain this yet. Don't worry about that. Focus on what am I doing every day, those small steps that lead to the bigger steps, that lead to the bigger steps to get to that final goal. Because so much, we see a lot of results, but we don't see work. We don't see LeBron, in the gym right now practicing for next season, right? We see him in the NBA finals and we're like, oh my goodness, he's amazing, except for the last couple of games. But besides the point, we're focused so much on results and we're so focused on getting everything right now. And when we don't get it right now, we get so mad and it's like we want to quit and say, man, it's not for me. But give yourself time to go through the process.
Oh man.
Give yourself time to make mistakes, knowing that you will make mistakes, but that's okay. What do you learn from those mistakes, right? And these are just the basic things that will separate those who excel versus those who just stay in the same place and just sort of say, well, it is what it is.
No, you're completely right. How you react to something, and it's okay to feel bad, right?
Oh,
it's
of course,
okay,
it is.
like you said, it's okay to feel sad or angry that maybe you failed something, you didn't obtain a goal that you had set out to do, or you failed a test. And 100% not what we're saying is, you can't feel angry, you can't feel mad, but, because we're human, we have emotions deeply rooted within us, and it's totally fine to feel that. However, as you said, you need to be able to push past that. And then, once you maybe calm down a little bit and you relax and you figure out, okay, I failed, that sucks. I don't feel great. It doesn't feel good and I don't want it to happen again. So how can I ensure that doesn't happen again? What do I need to do wrong? Maybe try to dissect the process of whatever you were doing. And that's tough. And I think that's a learned process as well, at least in my experience, being able to control my reactions. And then being able to analyze my reactions and my actions that led up to my reactions, and then my reactions, like the entire process. And I can give everybody a real life example right now is these conversations. Like, wow, they are far from perfect. Like sometimes I don't know what my thought, gets cut off, or I say the wrong word, and I'm sure people are picking it apart. And to me, that's totally fine, because again and again and again, I say, this is why I want to have a real conversation with you. I don't want to be that guy you see on late night television, like two celebrities talking to each other, and it's so like robotic, and they're like talking about how great their lives are, and it's scripted, and they're like, well, I'm going to ask you these questions, answer them this way. Like, to me, I don't like subscribing to that. That's not real to me. What's real is just having a conversation with you right now. And whenever somebody has a conversation with their friend or their spouse or their family, and they just, and you don't always have to have intellectual conversations. I just choose to have them on this program because I have the opportunity to have them with people like yourself. However, I do think it's very healthy mentally, and for your longevity of both, mind and body, to be able to have these conversations. And
no doubt.
Yeah, but like I was saying, nothing's perfect in these conversations,
No, but I really dig this whole. I dig this conversation because when you get around like-minded folks, it really gets me going. Right? It says that I'm doing something right to where I'm attracting someone who is of like mind. Because when I got your text, I was like, okay, that sounds cool, right? It was just by me putting out positivity, right, on Instagram, and then that comes back to you, right? So the more you can put out there, and some things will stick, some things won't. Some things will just be shot out and never come back to you. Right?
Yeah, believe me, I got my fair share of those, but
yes, and I like even me too, right? There was a time where still, like I told you my whole Twitter story, but there were 100 other times where I asked someone, "Hey, can I just talk with you?" And nothing, no response.
Yeah.
There was one time, there's this one person. One of my mentors, this was one of his, best friends, and he wouldn't talk to me. And I'm like, hey, such and such, and he knows me. Shouldn't we have a conversation? And nothing. So I'm like, but that's what you're gonna get sometimes. Good, bad, indifferent. And I didn't know why, and I still don't know why. But it is what it is on that level. But you just keep pushing on, moving on. You don't let that define you.
Yeah, and you gotta accept it. Like we were saying, that's just another thing to be able to understand how to react to. Just like failing a test,
right?
You got to be able to react to that rejection, I guess is how you can say it. Of because why don't they want to talk to me? What's wrong? What's wrong with me? I mean, I've had the thoughts even with this channel. Like I send out, I'm like, hey. I like what you're doing. I think it's awesome. I think you'd be great for the show because I'm pretty picky. Like, I mean, I send out a lot of cold calls, but I'm very picky about those cold calls because I want that authenticity, and I don't like seeing like that cookie cutter stuff out there. But regardless, what I'm saying is like I still send out quite a few, and I get a lot less replies than I send out. And you gotta. At first, I was like, well, oh man, maybe I'm not doing it right, or maybe I'm not onto something. Maybe people don't like this stuff, and you think those, or at least I'm quick to having negative thoughts when something doesn't go right, and that may just be me. I don't know if that's a lot of other people, but like when something doesn't go my way, in a sense of like a cold call turning up cold, I'm like, something's wrong with what I'm doing. And I think you said yourself, like, that one guy replied to you, and it's pretty incredible that he did reply to you, but there was plenty of other people that didn't reply to you, and you have to be able to accept that, and then deal with it as you see, as you were saying, understand why, and then try to figure out and react like your wife was saying. Like, you choose how you react, you choose how you perceive the information. Well, maybe not necessarily how you perceive the information, but definitely how you react to that information. Right. And then, and then move forward from there.
Yeah, it's and that's the thing that, as a faculty, as someone who mentors students, is trying to get them in the mindset of, but just focusing on the process. It's not always going to go right, but you just keep moving forward. You keep pushing. And if you don't push, then what? Nothing's going to happen.
Absolutely.
So what choice do you have? You have to just keep on pushing. You got to keep on moving forward, because the alternative is just to sit and just wait for something to happen.
And that's
not going to pass you by.
Yeah. That's not going to happen.
So that's why I really dig this, right? You just reach out, and you reach out to like great folks. I've watched about at least 4 of your shows. I was like, man, this dude is doing something, right?
I appreciate it. Oh man, like I said, I'm working really hard on trying to make each subsequent one better, and I do appreciate you for listening to those, and thank you for your kind words.
Yeah, no doubt. I was like, what am I going to get myself into? So,
but I think a really good point that I kind of wanted to bring back, that I didn't want to skip over this, is you said that, you saw, well, maybe because I'm reaching out to you, you're like, well, I guess I'm doing something right. And then, because I'm emitting, or I'm kind of attracting those like-minded individuals. And that's what I love about this. There's a lot of reasons I love having these conversations, but I because talking to you, not only, obviously I want to share your story with other people, and I want to share the conversation with other people, but I'd be lying. I want to learn from you myself. I want to be able to engage with people like you, or like I was telling you, the gentleman I talked to last week, he was a speaker as well, and I want to learn from him. I want to learn from you. I want to learn from all these people, but not only, not only do I want to learn from you all, but I'd like to share that information as well, because I definitely understand that there's a lot to learn, and there's absolutely no problem with that. Like, it's the fact that an individual understands that there's consistent, or how should I say, not consistently, but you're always going to be there's always something to be learned.
Right.
And to be able to accept that, maybe a little bit humbling at first, but one I think needs to accept that. And I think regardless of what you want to do, if you want to converse with people, if you want to, play sports, if you want to be a college professor, if you want to be a speaker, if whatever you want to do right now, you insert the variable in this sentence. Network with those people, talk with those people, because just like you and I enjoy having this conversation right now. And I know I'll go to bed and I won't go to sleep because I'll be thinking about everything, and it ignites a fire within me too that I'm already passionate about, and then it reciprocates. Like then you said you're excited to talk to me about it. So
that's right.
If somebody wants to, whatever their variable was, if they go and they talk to people that are also interested in that, then it's only going to, you're only going to bounce off each other, like you're only make each other stronger.
Right. It's gosh, it might have been 5 years ago, I read a book called The Secret, right? And a lot of people sort of, talk it off as like, it's whatever, sort of hokey. But it's true. One of the secret is the law of attraction, right? You attract what you put out there, good or bad.
100%.
So, that's why I think shows like this, that's why I think, just being that person who wants to serve others, right? Not because they want to get something back, because that's the right thing to do, of helping others, because when you help someone else, you sort of help yourself, right? So that's why that's why you're in your seat right now. That's why I'm in my seat right now, of just wanting to help others, because we see the value in that. And one thing to one of your last points about, accepting that you don't know. And that's one thing I always start off in my ethics course. Talk about Socrates. Socrates, he was considered the wisest man, right? And the oracle at Delphi said he was the wisest man. And he was like, well, how can I be wise? I'm not the wisest man. And the oracle's like, well, you're the wisest because you know that you don't know. And he said, that's what makes you wise. And I think the more of us, the more that we understand that we don't know everything, that it's okay to look at someone else and ask them a question. It's okay to pick their brains. It's okay to admit that, hey, I'm here right now, but you're somewhere I aspire to be. Can we have a conversation, right? As opposed to, I think when we're younger, we're like, I have to have it together. I have to know what I'm going to major in. I have to know what school I'm going to go to. I have to know a job. But why, right? You're not going to know all these things between 18 and 22 years old. You're still figuring yourself out, right? But being open to know that, hey, things might change. I might have to change majors. I might have to change school. I might have to leave school, then come back. I might have to work. I might have to do these things. And that's okay. Your journey is your journey, but you have to live your journey and really define that journey for yourself. But being open to that, being open to saying, like we said earlier, I could fail. That's okay. I could mess up, but that's okay. But what I'm going to do after that, I think that's the thing, right? And that's the thing that I think we need to talk more about, where people feel more comfortable and confident saying that, I'm not the only one in this situation, right? And I always tell my students, I say, you're not the only one who feels this way, right? Every student, not every, but many of your peers right now who are in front of you, coming up behind you, are going to have these same feelings.
Yeah, of course.
But just work on the process. Try to figure yourself out. What are you doing today to figure out what you want to do 5 years from now? What books are you reading? What things are you feeding your mind? Some like, nothing. I said, well, that's part of the concerns, right? I won't say problems, just part of the concerns, right? Yeah. I want to phrase it in a very positive way, right? So I'm concerned that you're not concerned enough. But I can't be concerned. I can't be more concerned than you, right? You have to take ownership of this, right? So if you don't take ownership of your own situation, who else is going to do it for you? Essentially, you're going to be working in someone else's dream, right? Help create your own dream right now, right? Work towards that. And the more we can put that message out there, and the more people are comfortable with that, and more people are comfortable asking questions, right? Genuine questions, being curious. I think we've sort of lost that sense of curiosity. I see in my son. My son just turned 4. He asks a million questions, right? and it's really cool. Like today, we were going on and on and on about about cars. Well, why does car have this? Well, why does it have this? Well, why does it have this? I'm like, well, after a few questions, I'm like, well, I don't know. So, but it's crazy, right? That they say by the age of 5 or 6 years old, your rate of asking questions just drops, right? And now you're sort of focused on getting everything right? Wow. And that's part of this K through 12 standardization, indoctrination, as some people call it, of sitting in your seat, getting the right answer, memorize this, and regurgitate it back. But life isn't really about that, right? It's about taking this information and trying to figure out, well, what can I do with it, right? Life isn't multiple choice tests, right? Sometimes you just got to figure it out. It has to be an essay. You have to write your life out. You have to write the answers out. Yeah. And I think the more we get away from this getting everything right to saying, okay, well, you could be wrong, but that's okay. Yeah. Once folks can get in that mindset, I think you're going to see a shift. But that's a long process, but I'm hopeful, right? And that's the thing that we really want to push in college is it's not just about retaining content, gaining content. It's about, well, what do you do with the content? How can you do something tangible with that content? And what value can you create from learning these business models? What value can you create from learning more about economics or history? And blending, the liberal arts and the sciences, right? There is value there, but it's all about changing that mindset. And really, it's almost one student at a time. It feels like, but it's something that needs to be done. And I think myself, a lot of my colleagues and peers are trying to fight that good fight. To get students to see things in a different light. That the world isn't just as is, but you can transform it. The world around you as well as your own world. So that's my soapbox speech right now.
Oh
so.
No! You don't even need to call it that. But what I did have, as you're talking, I'm thinking as well as listening. But because you said your son's like asking so many questions. He's a 4-year-old, and then you said around like, I think 6 to 8,
5, 6.
All the kids are a lot of time are already coming out of not asking so many questions. Right. And I think I see almost like, I don't know if there's like this contrast between like you are a college professor and of course like you're teaching in the structuredized way. However, almost as you were describing it, it's the structuredized way initially in childhood, even in children in single digit ages, that's teaching them not to maybe ask so many questions. So of course you, Vaughn, are teaching, children and adults, emerging adults how to think like this. But I mean, what's your take on maybe that structure or like how we've been teaching our kids? Like, so you, like I said, and I want to like hit this on the head, like you're doing something special and unique. I do think that because I had plenty of college professors that I couldn't stand because it wasn't that way. And like I've said already a lot for anybody that's listened to a while, like I love learning. I love reading and I just love learning in general. And I love talking to people like you, but I didn't get any of that in school. I didn't get any of that in college. I mean, does there need to be a change, or what do we need to do to get people motivated before they get to you? Because there's not going to be everybody like you. I mean, and I don't know. We probably, we don't need to know that answer right now, but I think like at a certain point, and I don't know, do we need to do something different for our youth to be able to exercise their minds, to be able to ask questions earlier? So, because not everybody's going to be lucky enough to have somebody like you that's teaching them that.
That's how much more time do we have? Because that's a long answer I'm about to give. No. So all right. So one of my first things that really hit me was, I was teaching this marketing course, and it was this marketing project, and one of my better students said to me, you don't give us too much instructions on what it is that you want to see. You give us sort of like this framework. And I said, well, exactly, right? I'm giving you a framework, but you sort of have to sort of fill it in, take in all the things that we learned during the whole term and now putting it into this project. And this person was like, well, in high school, the teacher told us what to do, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, exactly. Yep. And we just did it.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
That's great. But life isn't really like that, right? Life is so much more of, using your creativity and trying to find value, right? And taking this thing that you look at and say, well, how can I, make this attractive, make this worthwhile or value to somebody else. And I think that's part of getting things right. Students are so afraid, or at least some of the students that I've interacted with. Because I even teach. I've taught high school. I taught high school summer school about maybe 3 years. And this one particular student, she never turned in her homework, and I was like, well, why didn't you turn in her homework, right? So we're only here for like 8 weeks. So I pulled her aside. I was like, what's up? What's going on? You're not turning in your homework, but you're talking in class. You're answering questions, so I know you're reading. Why aren't you turning it in? And her answer blew me away. She was like, I'm afraid it's going to be wrong.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, what? I said, did you do your homework? And she went in her book bag. She pulled it out. She was like, it's here. I'm like, I said, wait. I said, wait a second. I said, so you're doing your homework, but you're afraid that it's going to be wrong. She goes, yeah, I'm afraid it's going to be wrong, so I don't even want to turn it in. And I didn't really know how to respond to that. I was like, no, turn it in, right? That's part of the reason why you're probably in summer school, because you're not doing your homework, or you're not turning it in. Turn it in.
Yeah.
Like, it was just so like mind blowing to me. So this crazy obsession with being right, and I think that really hampers our kids because or check this out, right? So if a student is told for the longest time that they're smart, and then they start doing not doing as well in class, now they're supposed to be smart, but now they're not doing what a smart kid is supposed to do. What does that do to your whole psyche, right? As a student, I'm supposed to be this. I'm not getting there. Who am I now, right? So my son, who's 4, he goes to this one school where they value more so effort, right? And so the whole premise of the school is about exploration, curiosity. And our first time visiting this school, so all parents had to visit a school, and it was just looked like madness, right? Some kids were reading, some kids were doing art, some kids were on maps, some kids were painting. I'm like, this looks crazy. This isn't school, right? Like, as I'm thinking back to like a K through 12 type school.
Yeah, of course.
But after about 10 minutes, you start realizing, man, these kids are really digging what they're doing, right? They're really into drawing. They're really into, sitting, reading their book, intently. They're really into doing this. And I was like, wow, this is like very organized in a chaotic way, but it's very organized. These students are really into it. And the whole thing about the school is letting students explore their curiosity, fully engage with the subject, right? And I think that goes back to your point is, when you're in college, sometimes classes, and not all classrooms can be, engaging, or at least on the surface, but they should be. And how do you capture that engagement? How do you capture that curiosity of a 4-year-old, of a 5-year-old, and put that into a 17, 18-year-old when they're, for the better part of their life, they've been told, sit there, do this, read this.
That's what I'm saying.
That's hard to break. So for me, I'm very intentional with trying to break that, and it's not like this slow thing. It's like right now we are moving the first class. We are starting this. We are doing design thinking. We are starting to look at prototyping. We're trying to do ideation. So one of my favorite classes. So in my intro to business models course, it's about ideas, right? So one of the modules is coming up with ideas. So imagine a classroom, 4 walls. On one side of the wall, I challenge my students. So they have essentially sticky notes. Come up with 100 in 10 minutes that can make money. I don't care how you do it in terms of what the business is, what the idea is, but 100 ideas that can make money. Some of the things, a little illegal, but I'm trying to get them to think. And it's time. And then on the next wall, it's 50 ideas that are bad ideas, right? So I just want to know 50 bad ideas, because there's a lot of bad ideas that turn into good ideas, right? It's just how you sort of tweak them, right? So you think of something like, bikinis in Antarctica. It doesn't make sense on the surface, but how could you make it work somehow, right? Yeah. So just come up with 50 bad ideas. And then on the third board, it's about, how can you clothe or give everyone in the city a warm winter coat, right? How could you do it? And each of these stations is 10 minutes, and you just go. And there's music playing, and it's like, and I'm there like a crazy madman. Most of these are freshmen. They're looking at me like, yo, this dude is nuts. But I'm like, no, this is what class has to be. You have to think, you have to engage, you have to go. And then that's the tone that sets off the entire term, is we are going to jump in, we're going to dig in, because if we don't do it this way, you're going to sit there and it's the textbook, and it's going to be boring. And who wants to spend a whole term doing that? So, that's sort of my style. It doesn't work for everyone. I'm not saying that, I do it the best. Yeah. But it's attempting to look at education in a different way, looking at it from a lens of curiosity, looking at it in a lens of engagement, because that's where real learning takes place. Because once you could spark their mind to say, man, that was cool, or man, what if, right? Then they want to start seeking knowledge on their own. And once they do that, that's where true learning takes place. That's how it happened to me. Yeah, that's the important part. I want it for myself, not for this grade, because grades, they come and go. But when I want to learn something, really jump into it, I don't care what the grade is, and that's, I think, how you make a college classroom, how you make education change. And change for, I won't say the better, but make it a little different, right? Because when you think about it, education was really based on this 20th century industrialized model of sit there, do this so you can go work in a factory. Well, we don't really have factories anymore, right? What are you creating of value for somebody? Who's going to create that next Airbnb, that next Uber?
Yeah, and that's why I'm so glad to hear that, like, even at your son's age, that's what's going on, because that's at the first step of when they're really starting to engage and learn in that manner. And then here you are on the tail end of it, doing it in college. Now, I firmly think that needs to be applied throughout all the in-between parts as well. And again, like, just as this, dynamic teaching, if you want to call it, or more engagement teaching, is good for maybe you or for me, and maybe for more people to figure out what they want to do or what they don't want to do. It's probably not going to work for a few people, and of course that's the thing, and not everybody's going to work for everything. I get it, but I do think, like you just said, like, everybody just sitting in the classroom doing what they're told, like that girl not wanting to have the wrong homework, or whatever crazy probably amount of examples you have, like, I think at least being able to offer the different aspects of it, like not every class needs to be like how you do it, but sure as shit, not every single class needs to be like sitting there, yes sir, yes ma'am, like, this is my homework, this is the answer, this is exactly how it's going to be, because and I understand maybe to a certain point, or maybe not, people need to have prerequisites or whatever, is the equivalent of that, but I don't know, food for thought, and me to be, and again, just a thought process here is maybe that doesn't need to be, maybe you don't need any prerequisites, or maybe you don't, maybe what if you find out, or your son, finds out in an early age that he's very, very interested in X. So why not just pursue that the entire time and get so good at it and be something that he's happy at it? And I don't know, like I said, I was a college dropout, and here I am, and I'm still trying to find my path in a sense. So what do I know? But what I do know is that me personally, like you, what I definitely know is that I wasn't interested in school, and I know whatever was going on there didn't work for me. I was bored out of my mind. But when I figured out that I like to learn, game over. I knew I liked to learn, and whatever triggered that in me, it was like reading books, listening to other podcasts, talking to people like yourself. Those are the things that triggered this, the beginning stages of wanting to learn in me. And if I could figure out a way, or if we could figure out, as a society, to be able to give that opportunity to everybody throughout the way, or throughout their lives, at all ages of their life, they're all school, all points, middle or grade school, middle school, high school, college, at least give the opportunity. I'm not saying that, it has to be this way, but at least have the opportunity to maybe do the classic schooling in one manner, and then be like maybe more of like an entrepreneurial minded, like, you can do things like this, you can go try things and you can fail. I don't know. I think a lot of things work, from the classic way of teaching, but I think there's a lot of substantially beneficial factors that come from more, like a new age thinking, or like a more of that dynamic, interactive thinking and teaching, and at least showing kids that there's more out there than just, sitting in that classroom, you were saying, and then going off to get shipped off in the factory.
Yeah, it's just giving them essentially a new way of thinking, right? A new way of looking at education. And it's there's so many examples I can sort of pull, like Airbnb did this, Uber did this, but showing them that it is real, right? Airbnb started because you had like 3 or 4 guys living in San Francisco who couldn't make rent. They're like, well, they took out literally a sheet of paper, a napkin, and started just writing ideas. Well, how can we make our rent in San Francisco? And they said, hey, we have the spare room, and there's a conference here. Let's just put it on Craigslist and see who wants to come. Right, and then that's how Airbnb started, was with this sort of wacky idea.
That's what I'm talking about, and that's what you're doing in your class. Like you're like, think of these ideas, and what I love about that example is that you're not only having them think of like the good ideas, but you're having them think of the bad ideas. And like you said, like you can make those bad ideas good ideas. I love that you do that part of it. Because maybe you're thinking of like problems on even a higher scale, like what are problems in the world? Those are the bad ideas, but how can we turn those into good ideas? Like, so maybe some kids like, okay, we have all this pollution, or we have all this plastic in the oceans, so how can we harness this plastic for something good and like create something out of something or something good out of something bad? So I think there's so many reasons why like that mind engaging process that you're doing with those students is great, and that's one of the reasons because you're to train somebody, or to train a mind to only like think of like solution, or think of positive things, over and over and over, has its place, but to think of like negative things and then be able to like find the reciprocal of that negative thing is very important.
Right. I think too, it's not trying to find the right answer. Right, knowing that there is no like right answer,
there may not be,
but being positive towards going towards it, of how you accept, not the right answer, right? And not saying that not a right answer is a wrong answer, just not the right answer. It might be the right answer for something else, but not just the thing that you're working on right now. But giving them the green light to think that way. So it's okay to think, right? To really think, and be curious, right? Because that's really at the heart of who we are as human beings, right? Just think about it, right? When my son was small, like really small, right? Just looking at, because I remember this one time he was like, why are there clouds? And when he was like around 2.5 or so, it was the fall, and leaves were falling off the tree. He said, why are leaves falling off the tree? He asked him like maybe like a more like babyish type way. He said, why are those things falling? I'm like, that's a great question, right? But to be okay with that, right? As a 17-year-old, as a 37-year-old, as a 47-year-old, just to be okay with questioning the smallest things. It's okay, right? And I think that's when you're going to start seeing a shift. But it's not just on the student end, it's on the faculty, teacher, administrative end.
Everybody.
Because just acknowledging that the future of work is changing, right? When I think about it, right, you have Airbnb. They own no real estate, but they're one of the largest accommodators of hotel rooms, right? Uber, they own no taxi cabs, but they're the largest taxi cab company, right? The future of work is changing, and we need to prepare our students to think in type of manner of how do you create value of something, right? And all they did was saying, hey, you have a car that you're not using, all day, or, it's sort of sitting there. You have the spare room in your house and you're not really using it. How can you take what you're using and just sort of monetize it, right? It's just those simple things. But giving students the okay to say, that's okay. I don't necessarily have to look for a right answer, but just look for something, right? You know, like just think. And that's the coolest part about learning is, you know, when I read these different books or listen to different podcasts, I get to think think how other people think, right? It's like, wow, that's a pretty cool way of thinking, of looking at the world,
from
right?
their perspective,
Right, because I'm coming from this limited worldview, and someone else has another worldview, and it sort of just opens me up a little bit more every time. And, you know, will I ever have the full worldview? No, but the more you put yourself out there, the better it is.
I agree.
At least I think it is.
I think so too. So too. And oh man, phenomenal, Vaughn. I've had an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Wow. No, I had a great time. I hope I didn't talk your ear off. My wife says I talk too much.
No, sometimes I do as well too, but I'm trying to be a good listener now. So I always my ears were more than open for your words. And no, you did not talk too enough, or you didn't talk enough. You didn't talk too much, but you didn't talk enough to where we can definitely have a conversation again. Because there's plenty more things to probably talk about on these things, maybe down the road if you'd like to. I'd love to do that if you. Man,
I had a great time, man. Whenever, you know, just let me know.
Yeah, because I do appreciate it. You got me talking, or you were talking. You got me thinking about like the education question that just can't like. I genuinely wanted to know that. And you said how much time you got, and I said, well, as much time as it takes, because I genuinely want to know, because I think that's an issue. Because I know, like, and like I said, the fact that it took me like 24 or 5 years to find out that I enjoyed learning, just it makes me sad. Like, there's no other way to put it. Like, it makes me sad. I'm like thinking about like how much I could have. And I'm not saying maybe how much I could have accomplished, but you know, how many more books could I have read? You know, where would I be now? And you know, none of that matters now because it happened when it happened, and I'm making the best of it now. However, if I have the opportunity to help somebody else figure that out about themselves earlier, kind of like you know exactly like you're doing in your college classes, then that's what I want to do. And like we said again, I can't remember if we said it on or offline, but you can only, you know, give so many positive quotes to somebody or have conversation with them and recommend to them or give them advice. But unless they truly experience it themselves, are they really going to make a change themselves like real quick? So you see your best friends in a bad relationship, you can tell them it's the worst relationship in the world, but they're so emotionally involved and wrapped up in it. They're like, well, I'm going to stay with her, you know, but they'll never get out of it. So I think unless somebody experiences it themselves, will they truly make that change for themselves? And it's my hope. It's truly my hope that hearing people like yourself, like everybody I've had, at least maybe spark a little bit, like, okay, you know, that line that Vaughn said, or that line that whoever said previously really resonates with me, and you know, maybe I will pick up that book, or maybe I will try that thing I thought I'd never do it, or maybe I'm gonna ask that guy or girl how they're doing today, and then actually want to know how they're doing today. So I hope one of those things sits with somebody listening to this. So I really thank you for contributing to that. Yeah, your story is amazing, and I think it's so cool. And you're such a great example of a lot of things, but just of things of like just talking to somebody like random. I keep on going back to that example of you talking to that guy, but it's obviously resonated with me. I think it's so funny how things work out. But yeah, I'd love to be able to speak with you again.
Let's do it. Let's set up a time. Make it a date.
All right, man. That's what I like to hear.
I'm with it.
All right, Vaughn. Well, as I always say at the end of these conversations, thank you so much for spending the time with me here and having a conversation and sharing your story with everybody here. And we'll link up after this, and we'll make sure that you give me anything. You know, what's your your Instagram handle is all that stuff. We'll figure it out. Yeah, we'll just send it to me, and we'll figure it out. And anybody that wants to maybe even get in contact with you, send you a tweet. Or, you know, if anybody wants to just follow your journey and your continuation, and maybe they enjoyed how you teach, and they have a question, or maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a professor out there or a teacher out there that's like, I really agree with this guy, and I'd like to maybe pick his brain so I can teach kind of in that manner as well, with my own authenticity. Yeah, I don't know, maybe not, It's only my hope that that helps somebody. And if anything else, I always say you helped me because I learned a lot from you today. So
thank you, brother. I really appreciate you,
Yeah.
man. You doing it, and I hope we can do it together like this
of course.
again.
All
Yes.
right, Vaughn, it was a pleasure. I'll talk to you later.
No doubt, man.
All right, see you.
Peace.